Hi, I'm Jarrod Dahl, and I'm running a business in northern Wisconsin called Woodspirit Handcraft, and my wife and I also run a traditional craft school called Woodspirit School of Traditional Craft. And today I wanted to talk about splitting of willow and splint material for basketry. My introduction to basketry was with ash splints back at North House in 1997. And I spent many years making ash splint baskets and teaching it. And I became interested in split material, or split willow in particular, from this basket, which was made by an itinerant basket maker in the farmlands just south of the town I'm living in. And an old man explained the technique because he was a young man when this itinerant basket maker came to visit his farm, and he was splitting over his knee to split the splints off the outer edge or outer circumference of the material. It's a technique I hadn't heard of before and became quite intrigued. It wasn't until years later, like 12, that I got a fellowship grant from the American Scandinavian Foundation to study basketry in Norway and Sweden, where I had been traveling for many years beforehand and made a lot of contacts, and then ended up going to study with a basket maker named Hege, Aasdal, and Samson, I forget his last name. Øvstebø. And there, my wife and I studied splitting willow, and we made two types of traditional farm baskets from Scandinavia. One is the Viedmis, and it's for hauling hay. So Hege and Samson were just here at our school teaching a workshop for 4 days, and I got a chance to hang out again with them and make this basket kind of in the sidelines of class. They're off to North House Folk School right now, teaching more. And so this is made from split willow. And in preparation for their class, I harvested a bunch of large diameter willow rods and did a lot of preparation, splitting ahead of class for the students. And so I want to demonstrate that technique, and also splitting over the knee with some smaller diameter willow and also some soft maple that I've been experimenting with too. So, the interesting part of this technique is that it is splitting from the outside of the center of mass. Normally when we're splitting, we're always splitting in halves and then splitting again in halves and halves and halves. This is on the outside. So I have this willow rod here, and I have this break that I made to the specifications of Samson's. And the key parts of this, you want to come a little closer, Jasmine? Maybe?
Or go around?
Yeah, or come around. The key parts of this are the distance between the hole and the fulcrum. It's about 6.5, 7 inches from inside to center. And the other key dimension is the height of this fulcrum is at the top of the 2-inch hole that's drilled. And I made this system so I can just clamp it in and out of my bench vise whenever I want, or screw or clamp to a lower bench. So this technique, we need to bend down on the material, and you'll see how this works in a few minutes. I'm going to leave enough length here so that I have the leverage to bend, and then what I'm going to do is make a small V-notch, about 1/4 inch deep or so, in the outside edge. And then I'm going to slowly lever down, and what's going to happen is, if you come close and see, there's a little split along the bark. and then I can lift up. Now the key to this technique is the area in front of the fulcrum is where it's splitting. It doesn't split beyond the fulcrum. And the other key is to keep that splint, that will be the splint, held down on the wood. What's happening is that by holding it down and it bends, the fibers shift from one another or shear from one another. So that's what we're exploiting, the long fiber nature of wood. So never pull beyond that split. So the split ends 3-4 inches in front of the fulcrum. Hold the splint down and pull. Push down. If you want to get close again, Jazz, people can maybe see the slippery end. All right. At this point, I don't have any more fulcrum, so I just pull the last of the material off. And what we have here is a beautiful willow splint that follows the ring perfectly. This is really exceptional material, so other materials might be less likely to split along the ring, but either way, the technique is the same. And maybe you stay further out, Jess, just so people can see the bending action. So I'm going to make another notch. And what you can do is just go around the circumference multiple times. So here I got my splint started. And I'm staying well back so that I have the leverage. And Samson and Hege taught me this, and also I think they learned this jig from an old basket maker farmer in Norway when Hege and Samson were traveling around studying from all these old timers. So and so from here I would peel and shave down thinner and more uniform, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So we can go around and around the circumference numerous times. I'm going to do, yeah, that'll be good enough for now. The other technique is splitting over the knee. I'm going to split this willow, smaller diameter willow rod with the center of mass and slowly try to control the split. So you want to kind of pull equally on both sides, and if it gets thinner on one side, you pull on the thicker side. And I'm going to also quarter it. And the same again. Normally I would maybe have some type of break to allow controlled splitting. So this I have a maple, willow, and then also I have a red maple. So now I'm going to shave. So the old man that I heard about, he talked about when he was a kid, they used small diameter rods and they would just cut in and bend over the knee the same as the large one I just showed. But I've been experimenting with a little bit of a different technique in order to split wide weavers, and also this maple, which is a little bit more dense. So this technique would allow you to split larger diameter material first by splitting and then bending over the knee. So I'm going to use my crooked knife. It's a tool used in the Great Lake region for making birch bark canoes and snowshoes. I used to make these and sell them. My friend Nate Johnson does. We'll try to put some links in the bottom of this, in the description. And I did a talk on them that's on YouTube somewhere in this library of my videos. So I've edged this piece of willow and flattened out, taken the diamond off. And now I'm just going to do the same technique, but instead of from the outside, I'm going to work on the inside.
Let me zoom in on the piece of wood so
Okay.
people can see what kind of edging you did.
Just
And also on this in the center.
the diamond, just taking the diamond and some of the pith off.
Okay.
And from here, it's the same technique. Delaminate, hold down. So that's another way of taking the splint. And you can see how it follows the ring and left a little bit of a cove. You can also do it from the outside. Being careful not to break the fragile willow. You can crack the material if you bend it too tightly over the fulcrum. And that's a nice thin split. There's also the manual splitting, which I'll demonstrate too, which is a little bit more the norm. Just gonna flatten this out a little bit. Take the rails off of that cove, just to facilitate a little bit more equal force. You remember, these baskets are farm baskets. They're made for, hard work and use. So they're a little bit more rough. And now the center of mass splitting that is more typical of splitting wood and ash splint, white oak. It's the center of mass. And you can control the splitting by pulling on that thicker side. The key is also to keep the splint in tension so you can control it. There's another way you can do it by doing it this way. There's lots of ways of splitting. So we have this very nice splint, 2 splints, and then I have a shaving tool, which I'll show you in a minute, but I'm gonna split some of this red maple too. This is exciting. We were in Japan recently and got to hang out with some basket makers, both bamboo and a type of maple. So we're experimenting with our local maple, which is a red maple. So I edged the material. And again, I'm gonna work from, this is really twisted, so I'm gonna follow the twist.
So you're taking out the pith right now?
Just taking out the pith, yeah.
Okay.
Cooking knives are great tools, but you know, you don't want to gore yourself. Be careful if you use one.
And this rod was harvested?
A couple days ago, when was it, maybe Saturday? So again, I need that leverage, so I'm just trying to find where I can bend. But again, the conventional technique is from the outside, but I think this inside splitting technique creates a little bit more uniform splint in the sense that it's not as coved or cupped as much because it's not following the rings the same way as from the outside. You can see how that is delaminating along the way. I'm really excited about this technique of splitting from the inside instead of the outside. It has a lot of potential for making wider splints. So this one might not be as good because it's been cut on one side. So I tend to discard that. And I got a little prep work here. Cutting the cove down just a little bit. These things are just on the edge. The grain is kind of spiraling, so we're not going to get a pure width splint out of this. So, you know, that's turning out to be pretty nice, and we can edge it. This material is a little bit twisted. So as I get into it a little bit more, I can kind of see the fiber structure and what it's shaped like. So I'm going to just edge it a little bit more, make it a little bit more a square cross section. Here I'm getting some torn fiber, so back to the twisted wood fiber. now we can get a more uniform splint off of it because I've made it a little narrower, more uniform. That end is a little thick yet, so can't quite get the leverage I need. And just like the bigger splint or the bigger sapling, just pull it off. So that's looking nice. I'll do one more. I think, like I mentioned, the beauty of this technique is that you're able to get wide splints kind of right away versus the other method where you're limited to working from the outside of the circumference.
But the splint ends up still having a little cup on it.
This one does. The last few didn't. I think it's just going to end up being how the tree was, and what the characteristics are in the tree.
Can you hold it still so I can zoom on it? Okay.
And maybe what I'll do is I'll keep splitting this down either with the center of mass method or more of the over the knee. And one more. So that farm basket that I made had really wide splints, which are hard to get. And what I did in class was hand split them using the center of mass technique or approach.
Oh, you're talking about that one?
Yeah. But
That's the one you made in class.
But with this modified upside down approach, I can get uniform thickness splints right off the split versus having to split and shave them. Manually split, center of mass split and shave them. I'm visually inspecting the split, but also I can hear it and feel it. Now the first surface is cut when I trimmed the pith out, so I may not have a uniform split because that first surface was cut, but you can see wide. I'll do one more, and I think it's nice, not cut in too deep, but
There's the geese.
do a little prep work. Yeah, fall migration is happening now. Canadian geese. I'm really excited about this technique because I can get really wide weavers versus the break method. Jasmine has a ringer on. So. Just the last thing I want to show people is shaving the material. And this is what I learned from Samson and Hege. You can just take your knife on your knee. Sometimes they put a leather strap, or we used to use a pant leg from a pair of blue jeans from the thrift shop. But that's how you're gonna trim down your material to a uniform thickness. That's the one way. When we were in Sweden last year, I saw this tool at the workshop of a pine splint basket maker named Curt Bengtsson. And so I made one of these for the class that we just had, and was using it to make my baskets. So it's styled after, if you're into willow, rod willow making, skein work, which is a split willow rod run through a tool like this that's quite small and delicate with different widths. And what you do is you just hold the splint down in front of the blade and pull. Those blades are flat on the underside. This blade is convex on the underside, just slightly. And so what that does is allows me to lift up and down on the splint before it gets into the blade, and I can control the depth of cut by just raising and lowering my hand. If I get too aggressive of a cut, I can just let the splint go, and the shaving will get thinner and leave the wood. So I can control the depth of cut. So it's almost the same as the knife on the knee. And I can manipulate twisting the splint either hand to take cuts wherever I need. So it's a really great tool. It takes a little bit of skill to use, but it's worth experimenting with. It's just made from spring steel. If the blade is flat on the underside, it'll be too aggressive and it will just dive in and just cut right through the splint. So in this way, again, that convex underside allows me to control it a little bit easier. I can always push down with my thumb to get the thin cut, or raise up to get more aggressive cut. And I'm not really obsessed about long shavings, just uniform thickness for weaving with this willow. So that's a nice thickness. So I just wanted to show you all some of these tricks that I've been learning, and that upside down splitting over the knee is quite unique and worth experimenting with. So with that said, I think that's the end. We're going to put some information down in the comment section, links to Hege's website, a couple of their Scandinavian basketry websites. What I'm trying to do here in North America is promote wood splint basketry other than oak and ash, and adopt some of these Scandinavian techniques. Just like this basket, people did do it, but it wasn't very common. So with that, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy it. Wood splint basketry is awesome.